Welcome back to the Wellness Collective podcast. During the week, I broke the Instagram, I broke the internet with some comments about sun exposure. And I thought, let's get on here and talk about it. Let's unpack this. We have had the absolute fear of God put into us that the sun is bad, that it causes cancer, you need to stay away from it, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I did something that all smart humans do. I don't know if that's actually the right thing to say. I went to Dr. Google. It's not really a doctor in this sense. It's just a search engine. I went to Google and I wanted to know what percentage of life forms require the sun. And actually, I was pretty shocked at what I found. You might be shocked too to learn the number of life forms that require sunlight is closer to 100% than it is 99%. Now, I did go ahead and find a couple of sea creatures that don't require sunlight. They're pretty ugly looking characters. You can kind of tell they haven't spent much time exposed to light. And I think that's actually really telling of why it's so important. The sun gives us life. You might have seen somebody walking along and they're very, very invested in covering up. They've got the big sunglasses, they've got the big hat, sometimes they even have gloves on. They've covered up their body, they've gone all out to make sure that nothing's getting in. And if you actually have a look at these people, they look very unwell. Now, at the other end of the scale, you have probably seen somebody who looks like Magda from Something About Mary. She looks old and haggard, and we obviously don't want to look old and haggard either. But what was really interesting is when I started talking about sun exposure, a lot of people's mind went immediately to tanning. And I want to be very clear that what we're talking about is not necessarily tanning. We're talking about healthy sun exposure for the benefits of health, and there are many. You might be shocked to learn that the consequences of undersunning, not having enough sun exposure, are equal to overexposure, having too much sun exposure. So we really do have to look for that happy medium. And I'm going to tell you what I have always advised patients as being that number. But I want you to understand a few things first that are really important. So the first thing is to understand, underexposure is just as harmful as overexposure, and that we have to become relatively smart about how we are spending time in the sun. Like I said, we've had campaigns that are telling us we need to stay out of the sun. You've probably done the same thing, maybe even with your children. We're likely to say, be really careful, minimal sun exposure. And then, of course, we like to put a lot of sunscreen on ourselves as well, which we are now learning is a disaster as well. There are ingredients in sunscreen that have been linked back to issues with skin, including skin cancer. So what do? It's like, all right, hang on, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. It's very interesting also to understand that sunscreen blocks UVB rays. It's really important that we actually get UVB rays because it's this that actually converts to vitamin D. And if we're not getting vitamin D from the sun because we're actually blocking the UVB by using sunscreen, then we're not getting the benefits of vitamin D. And again, you find yourself in a position where you're under sunning. Vitamin D is really essential for hormone health. It helps to support healthy estrogen and progesterone. And it is also super important for calcium and the absorption of other minerals in the body. You need calcium to absorb other minerals. There's a lot of reasons why having some time in the sun without protection is very important, and I would argue one of the most sensible things you can do for your health. There is something else that actually is really important to consider when you're exposing yourself to the sun, and that is sunglasses. Our eyes are what helps regulate, or at least sends a message to the brain, which sends a message to the skin in terms of melanin production. And if you aren't doing that efficiently because you're actually blocking essentially the message from the eye to the brain, or you're at least distorting it, then that can be a factor in compromising the skin, where you might actually burn or at least damage the skin. Burn. So that's something else to really think about. You are actually disrupting the body's own natural mechanism that gives you that protection. It's important, I would say, that if you are out in the sun purposely, those 15 minutes that you're having, then you would want to do that without sunglasses as well. But you actually do need to be smart about it. So what do? How much time in the sun is the right amount of time? I have always said to patients that to get the benefits of the sun, we need to ideally have 15 minutes every second day without being covered. So that's without sunscreen, without being covered up. That's not a lot. But the trick is also, if you are fair-skinned, you are going to need less. And if you are darker skinned, you are going to need more. That's the rule. The darker the skin, the more you're going to need. Now, we're not sitting there aiming to burn. We're not even aiming to tan. Although the whole action of what your body goes through when you are in the sun is eventually you will build up a tan. You will build up that sun callus where your skin becomes a little bit more able to tolerate a little bit more sun. But you wouldn't go out there if you haven't seen any sun for a really long time. Guys, we've got to use common sense here. Really have to use common sense when it comes to this, because this is, I think, where a lot of people run into trouble. So we're looking at 15 minutes unprotected every second day and being smart about it. If that's too much for you, you absolutely wouldn't start. And I know I've had some of you write to me and say, Nat, if I sat in the sun for 15 minutes, I would burn. This is where we pull in common sense. You have common sense, and your skin also tells you when enough is enough. So you know from past experience, I would hope, where that point is that you start to compromise your skin. Now, I do want to actually also say when you overexpose your skin and you burn, that's actually absolutely causing damage to your skin as well. And I heard something recently that said around 7 sunburns in a lifetime doubles your risk of skin cancer. So again, we're being smart about it, but also if you are gradually spending time in the sun or even just spending 15 minutes every second day in the sun, then you are going to become a little bit more resistant as well. And you're going to get those maximum benefits when it comes to your health as well. The other thing that's really important, I think, to note is we generally feel better. It lifts our mood when we spend time in the sun. And when we have a little bit of colour on our skin, it also feels good. It's not a trick. There's a reason that a spray tan is something that's desired in terms of how you look in the mirror and how you feel. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually how we are designed. Whilst, yes, the aim is for health and not for tanning, the side effect of spending time in the sun is building a gradual tan, and you're doing that very safely. Now, let's say you are going to go out in the sun and it's going to be longer than 15 minutes. What do? I think, again, we need to let common sense prevail here and really pick the timing of the day that we're spending in the sun. But let's say you need to be out in the sun in the peak hours of the day. What are you going to do? You are going to cover up. You can wear a hat, you can wear a shirt, you need to use common sense. And obviously, if there's shade available, you're going to use the shade. Now, let's say you don't want to do all of that and you do want to use sunscreen. We need to be really mindful of the ingredients in sunscreen, and there are a couple of there's actually quite a few clean brands now, but your conventional over-the-counter sunscreens, you really need to look at the ingredients, because we now know that there are some pretty harmful ingredients that link to a host of issues, like I said, including the increase of skin cancer. Cover up, use a clean sunscreen. If you know that you can't cover up, I always take an umbrella to the beach in the middle of the day. Common sense also tells me that if I was to lie out there in the middle of the day, I am for sure going to regret it. It's not going to be a great outcome, and I'm putting my skin at risk, obviously increasing aging. Don't be fooled. Remember, undersunning and not having enough vitamin D has also been linked to skin cancer as well. We've really sold ourselves short with this whole scare campaign. I don't want people to be afraid of the sun. The sun is medicine. I think everything that we have at our fingertips when it comes to nature, please don't be fooled into thinking anything in nature really hasn't been put there for a reason. The only thing I can really think of is leeches. Like, why do they exist? and mosquitoes. But I'm sure there's a reason. But the sun, all life forms require it. We need it to grow. We need it to thrive. We need it to be healthy. We need it for food. We need it for so many things. There's one final thing I do want to say, especially for those that are living in Australia. The majority of us are immigrants in some form. Many of us are from countries that don't have the strong UV rays and sunlight that we have here in Australia, and that might be a contributing factor as to why we've been told to stay away from the sun, and we've seen issues with people and exposure. Again, genetics also play a very big role when it comes to how your skin and body reacts to the sun, and that could be a reason why you find it that these rules actually don't apply for you. But do think about the genetics, do think about the heritage. Your heritage and your skin colour, like I said, really do help to decipher that. But I do think about that a lot. We literally are a country of immigrants. The traditional people that do own the land and live on the land, I don't think they have the same problems that we have because their skin is more resistant, and that's absolutely for a reason. Our traditional land owners definitely have a more robust skin than us immigrants do, and I think that's definitely part of the reason that we've found ourselves in this position. And the pendulum has swung. We've totally moved away from something that's actually really, really healthy for us. We just need to have it in moderation. So the aim is not a tan. The aim is sun exposure for health. And to summarise that, we really don't need much, but we definitely need some, and we just need to use our common sense about it. I hope you've loved this solo episode. Like I said, it's been a very long while since I've jumped in and done one of these, but tell me what you think. I would love to hear from you if you've enjoyed this episode, if there's topics that you would love me to talk about. Please do go ahead and feel free to just throw the show a rating. I do a little shimmy and a happy dance when that happens. So if that is something you feel called to do, I'd love for you to rate the episode. I'd love for you to reach out. Let me know if there's anything else or any other questions you have or topics you'd like covered. And I will say, until next time, bye.